now we are done with the organic 2 weeks and we are ready to move on to biochemistry. And like I told you at the end of the last video of end of week 2, I told you that we're going to be studying the 4 major macromolecules in biochemistry. They are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So we're starting off today with carbohydrates. And we're going to talk about the structure of carbohydrates, and we'll talk about the function, and we'll see how it relates to your bodies, and we'll get into all of that. But let me first start off by talking about some main functions, general functions of carbohydrates, and then we'll talk about specific ones as we go into the specific structures, okay? So, carbohydrates. What are some key functions of carbohydrates? Number one, it is the primary energy source. Okay, you know that you check your blood glucose levels, right? And it's the glucose in your blood that is so important for your brain and your heart and all the cells of your body. So glucose is a carbohydrate that is your main energy source. And we're going to be talking about how we get energy out of glucose. We will get into metabolism later on in the semester, and we'll go through glycolysis and the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. And then what do you get at the end of the electron transport chain? A whole bunch of ATP. So if you've had a biology class, you've heard of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. You get most of it in the mitochondria of your cells. So we're going to be talking about all of that. But anyway, how do we get all this? It's that carbohydrate that you're consuming mainly to help you get all this ATP. All right. Energy storage. That's another important thing. Do you have anyone in your family who is an athlete who's done carb loading before, let's say, a crazy marathon or something? What they do is they eat a lot of carbohydrate right before or the night before they plan on doing a lot of exercise, because glucose, which is the main component of, starch and all these things, the starchy foods that you eat, is stored in the liver and the muscle as glycogen. So that's your storage form of carbohydrate. Glycogen in the muscle is that quick energy source that these athletes need, and not just athletes, all of us need when we start to exercise. Now, the glucose that is stored in the liver, glycogen, that's a good source of glucose that can immediately be released into the blood if, let's say, you have been fasting or you haven't eaten anything all day. So the glycogen in the liver is broken down, sent to elevate your blood glucose levels so that your brain can function. So second function is energy storage, and you store it as glycogen in the muscle for exercise, for anything you're moving, and liver so that it can regulate your blood glucose levels. Okay, number 3, structural. If you've had a biology class, you know that plants have a cell wall. What is that cell wall made up of? Cellulose. Cellulose is a carbohydrate. We don't have a cell wall. Animals, humans don't have a cell wall. We have plasma membranes. And you've heard of the phospholipid bilayer. We're going to be talking about that in the lipid chapter. That's lipid, that's fat. But in that plasma membrane, you've got a whole bunch of proteins. And on top of those proteins, you have some carbohydrate attached. And they are called glycoproteins. So structure, whether it's plants or animals with a plasma membrane. Cell signaling, this category here is pretty large, but I'll mainly focus on, your blood types, different blood groups. I'm an O, but let's say you're an A or an AB or a B. Those are all glycoproteins on top of your red blood cells. So the glyco portion is a carbohydrate, and it's what makes all the different blood types different, okay? The O people, we don't have that at all, but all the A's and B's, you guys have that, all right? gut health. Oh yeah, what's that? Oh, you know how they tell you eat your fiber so that you can have good bowel movements? So yeah, when you're eating celery or carrots or all of those things that have a lot of fiber, those are all carbohydrates, okay? And then down here, this is important. Adequate intake of carbohydrates prevents protein and lipid catabolism. All right, what do I mean by that? Well, you know how some people go on these really ridiculous no carbohydrate diets? Like there are so many fads out there, and I'm definitely against all of that. You need carbohydrates because if you don't eat enough carbohydrates, then your proteins in your muscles start to degrade so that you can have enough to feed your brain. So you can turn a lot of this stuff into glucose that will feed your brain, or give you some energy. So you don't want to break down your protein. You want to break down fats. Yeah, if you're trying to lose weight and you want to get rid of fat, that's great. But excessive breakdown of fat, too much breakdown of fat, if you don't have enough carbohydrate in your diet, that causes a condition called ketosis. And you probably have heard of that if you're in the health field. Now, ketosis in and of itself is not a problem, but ketoacidosis, that is very dangerous. So we will be talking about that later on in the semester when we get into lipid metabolism. So these are the general functions of carbohydrates. And now let's go ahead and start talking about the structure of carbohydrates. Now, in organic chemistry, we learned about the terms alcohols and ketones and aldehydes. Remember those functional groups? Well, carbohydrates have all three functional groups. Some are alcohols with aldehydes, and some have alcohols with ketones. So the technical structural definition of a carbohydrate is a polyhydroxy aldehyde or ketone. What does a polyhydroxyaldehyde or ketone mean? It means that a carbohydrate is going to have either an aldehyde or a ketone and a whole bunch of OH groups. Remember how the OH groups, the alcohols, are called hydroxy groups? So that's what we mean by that. Now, there are several different categories of carbohydrates, and they usually categorize them based on either how many carbons they have or how many sugar units. So we're going to first divide them up as how many sugar units. So we have the monosaccharides, the disaccharides, and the polysaccharides. Okay? The word saccharide means sugar unit. So a monosaccharide is one sugar unit. A disaccharide is two sugar units and they're bonded together. A polysaccharide is 10 or more sugar units and they're all bonded together. All right? So we're going to first focus on the monosaccharides. Okay? And there are lots and lots of different monosaccharides, but I'm just going to give you guys the important ones that are relevant in our bodies and in biochemistry. So we'll talk about the pentoses and the hexoses. Okay, what do these two terms mean? Pent, if you've had a geometry class, pent means 5. So a pentose is a monosaccharide that is made up of 5 carbons. Okay, remember these are organic molecules. They're going to have carbons and hydrogens, and they're going to have hydroxyl group, they're going to have alcohol groups, and they're going to have either a ketone or an aldehyde. All right, hexoses, guess what those would be? They are 6 carbon sugars. Remember, the word saccharide just means sugar unit. So we are going to focus on pentoses and hexoses. Now, if you go through the carbohydrate chapter, it's got trioses and tetroses. Don't worry about those. We're just focusing on pentoses and hexoses. So let me give you the names of the pentoses and hexoses, and then in the next video, I will show you the structures. Okay, so the two pentoses that we're going to be studying this semester are the two sugars that are found in DNA and RNA. Oh yeah, that was another one of the functions I forgot to mention, components of DNA and RNA. So add that to your list. Okay, for those of you who know this, what does the D in DNA stand for? Do you know it? It's deoxyribose. That's the sugar. What does the R in RNA stand for? Ribose. That's the sugar. So those are two pentoses. So the two pentoses, the two sugars that we're going to learn about are ribose and deoxyribose. Okay, those are the two pentoses. Remember, what does the word pentose mean? It means a 5-carbon sugar. So ribose and deoxyribose are made up of 5 carbons and a bunch of other atoms, but mainly we're talking about 5 carbons. All right, there are 3 hexoses that I'm going to need you guys to know, and the 3 hexoses are glucose, galactose, and fructose. Notice they all end with OSE. Okay, so ribose and deoxyribose are pentoses, glucose, galactose, and fructose are the hexoses. And in the next video, we'll draw the structure of them and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about each one of them. Okay? All right, see you in the next one.